Education is so key, because once you know, you know. You can't unknow it, and you're making a conscious choice to hurt your body with that amount of sugar.
Before we dive into this week's episode, let's talk about a brand we both genuinely love, Cytoplan. You've probably heard us mention them before, and that's because their supplements are next level.
Yes, Cytoplan has been part of my routine for a while now. They just get it when it comes to health. Their whole approach is rooted in science and totally in tune with nature.
Exactly. Their formulas are bioeffective, which basically means the nutrients are in forms your body actually recognizes and uses properly and at the appropriate levels. Cytoplan is used and trusted by health practitioners across the country. Their formulas are developed by nutritional therapists and backed by over 3 decades of clinical insight. You really can feel the quality when you take them.
Plus, it's not just about what's in the bottle, it's the mission behind it too. Cytoplan is 100% owned by a charitable foundation, which means everything they do is about helping people live well for longer. It's not about trends or quick fixes, it's about real, lasting health.
That is so wonderful to know. And whether it's our energy, perimenopause, menopause itself, sleep, immunity, or just staying on top of your health, they've got you covered. You can also get a free health questionnaire and a consultation by ringing the helpline.
So if you're ready to take ownership of your health, check out Cytoplan, powered by nature, proven by science, and rooted in purpose. We'll pop the link and an exclusive 15% discount code in the show notes. Hello, I'm Karen Mellors.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
You've just tuned in to Alive and Loving It, and we're here to help you bring joy and energy back to your life. Hello, you're here with us again. Thank you so much. I don't know why I'm surprised now, Rosy, every week that we actually have people listening to us, because those viewing figures are going up. We've got more and more listeners. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to everybody in the US. Thank you to everybody in Australia that's listening to us. And thank you to everybody in Europe and the UK. We love you, love you, love you, don't we, Rosy?
We so do. And it's just so great to feel our community growing. Just love it.
Really, really is. Heartful. Right, this is episode 43. And we are getting to the nitty-gritty on diabetes. So I know we could have a few of Rosy's rants going on in this one. We are going to touch on all sorts of things about how we change, because diabetes, it's a bit of an epidemic, Rosy, isn't it? What's going on with diabetes?
Well, it is. And I want to include obesity as well and wrap this together, because they do go hand in hand.
Sure.
And it is kind of heartbreaking when it's going to make me cry, actually, because I've been preparing for this episode and looking at the statistics. And do you know that at the moment, in 0 to 5-year-old children, 10% of them are obese. And by the time it's 10, 11, it's 22%, Karen.
Oh my goodness, darling.
Of little kids, you know?
Yeah.
And then we're talking about 5.6 million adults living with type 2 diabetes.
Wow.
And the obesity figures I've just been looking at, in 1993, it was 53% of adults were overweight or obese. It's now 66% of us are overweight or obese.
It breaks my heart, doesn't it? It really does.
It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does, because, you know, it's, I suppose, you know, we are all so hypnotized, and we've somehow just, whether it's, you know, the advertising, the marketing of the fast food, ultra processed foods, sugary foods, confectionery drinks, you know, packets of sweets on every checkout in every supermarket in the UK,
whole aisles devoted to crisps or whatever the hell they are, those, ultra processed crackery type things.
Well, we're being told to, Rosie, aren't we? And the driver behind it all is to make as much money as possible for those companies.
Yeah.
I've got a friend staying with me at the moment who's driven up from Derbyshire and to the Scottish Highlands. And every time he stopped, he couldn't get any food. That's what he said to me. I could not get any food, Karen. I could just get crisps, sweets, fizzy drinks, everything was
Pasties.
pasta,
Yeah.
sugar, shit.
Sausage rolls. Yeah.
It's just, and there's no nutrition in it. And that's
Yeah.
what that's what we're being sold to all the time. That's our convenience, Rosie. This
Yes.
convenience so that we can work more or do more for other people. Oh, I didn't realize it would be me that was be having a rant this morning. But we've started off with our hearts open, full of love and care for what's going on, because it can be changed, Rosie, can't it?
It can be changed and it can be reversed. What's more, it's not a new study. There's a study which was the Mile a Day study done 15 years ago or so, showing that if people just walked 1 mile a day, that it reversed all-cause mortality. And subsequently, the same authors, Lean and co., showed that most type 2 diabetics could come off their medication if they just walked 1 mile a day.
Mm.
So, this can be within our grasp.
Well, we're going to get into that, aren't we, about what stops people from changing. But tell us first, because I've heard you just mention type 2, lay it out for us. What is diabetes? We know there's type 1 and type 2. What is the difference?
Okay, so type 1 you're born with, it's genetic, and your pancreas can't make enough insulin to bring down your sugar levels.
Mm-hmm.
So this is usually diagnosed in childhood, and it usually leads to lifelong use of insulin. And even that can be modified by our behavior. But type 2 is the new kid on the block, which is that when we keep on overloading our body with sugar and fat, that we go into this really pancreatic failure.
Mm.
The pancreas cannot keep on producing enough insulin. But as it goes on and on and on, we get other syndromes as well, which is we get insulin resistance, and then we get this other impact, which I've only recently fully understood, which is about the impact of stress in this picture.
Mm.
Because it's one thing, the glucose that we're taking in by mouth, but did you realize if you're stressed or frightened or anxious, the cortisol, your natural steroid, is telling your body to release glucose into the bloodstream?
Well, here we are again, quite quickly into the episode, and we're talking about stress.
Yeah.
I mean, it does underpin every lifestyle disease, I think.
It does. But, how many people know that the cause of your weight problem might be your stress?
Yeah.
And I don't just mean because you're feeling miserable or upset that you comfort eat. I'm talking about the fact that your body is literally breaking. Normally you store the glucose, but if the stored glucose is being released and turned into fat because you don't actually need it to run away from the tiger or, and so what's happening is it's that glucose is coming out straight into fat.
So let me get this straight then. So we're in fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
We're in stress. The cortisol is high. It's releasing glucose into our system because it thinks we're going to fight a tiger, but we don't. We're sat at our desk. We're on the computer.
So that goes straight into fat storage. And the typical distribution of that fat is around the midriff.
Yeah.
So, this is what we see.
For men and for women.
Yes. And if anything, I was surprised looking at the stats that obesity is slightly worse in men than women. It was 62% for women and 70% for guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
That does surprise me, actually, because I don't know, rightly or wrongly, I'm thinking there's more stress with women, but maybe that's not the case. And maybe men hide it more. So, you're in fight or flight. You don't actually know you're in fight or flight.
Yeah.
Your heart's beating fast and, you're ready to fight a tiger, but you're sat at this sedentary.
Also, what about the effects of alcohol and beer and the beer belly? And although, my goodness, looking at wine and how many calories
Mm,
or points on what Weight Watchers, when I was doing Weight Watchers, a glass of wine was 5 points, which was like a fifth of your daily allowance. You were allowed about 25 points in a day.
yeah.
So if you had 3 glasses of wine, you'd had 3/5 of your daily points.
Wow.
Hmm.
It's there in the data, isn't it? That's what amazes me, is that whatever system you follow, it boils down to the amount of calories in versus the amount of calories out. But what you're just bringing into the picture now, Rosie, is that if somebody is stressed, that's going to alter those scales.
Yes.
Right.
And this insulin resistance thing, the other tricky part of it is if the insulin stops working
Mm-hmm.
and can't make the glucose into the stored form of glucose, then where does it go? Fat.
Right.
So, that thing we've said before about us being overfed and undernourished is, excessive calories, but without the nutrients. But then if we put stress on top, then we are really piling all that extra glucose into fat.
Yeah. How serious is diabetes to your life?
Extremely serious. Extremely serious, because the worst thing it does is it starts to affect the blood vessels, and particularly the little ones, the capillaries down in the tissues. So this has disastrous effects on limb perfusion. So did you know, for example, that a lot of diabetics have to have a limb amputated?
Oh, God.
The other biggie is blindness,
Yeah.
because the little vessels to the back of the eye, to the retina, start to fry with the excess glucose, and the kidneys get affected, the heart gets affected, but also the brain gets affected. And I've been reading up about what they're calling type 3 diabetes, which is thinking that this is another cause of Alzheimer's and dementia, that because the blood glucose level can't be kept down, this is affecting our brains.
So the longer you have diabetes, the more symptoms you're going to see, and some other diseases are going to come along. That's what you're saying.
Well, it depends on the level of control of your diabetes. So in the Western world, we now have cleverer and cleverer ways of monitoring blood glucose. And any of us could walk off to the chemist and buy ourselves what's called a continuous blood glucose monitor,
Mm-hmm.
which are usually like a patch that you can stick on your arm,
Yeah.
and it Bluetooths to your phone, and it can tell you, if you've got a smartphone, it can tell you your current glucose level. There are other ones where you can, I think, put your finger into a slot and it will read it. And that means that you suddenly have some control yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a client who was saying to me, who has been diabetic really since his 20s. And he said he thought he was doing really well. One of his favorites was a chicken and mozzarella salad with a dressing. And he discovered that caused his blood sugar to rocket.
Mm-hmm.
So presumably the sugars in the milk and the cheese were, sending his sugar up.
Well, that's why I think the data is so important. And the clients I work with as a nutritional therapist, I love doing the 3-day food diary and feel diary right at the beginning, because we tell ourselves so many things that are untrue.
Yeah.
When you see the data, sometimes it's a huge shock. What you think you're eating is healthy isn't
Yeah.
actually what your body needs. And it's quite individual as well, Rosie, for people.
Exactly. So I think that, we can go and get one of these continuous glucose monitors. just to give ourselves a little reality check of what is it that I'm eating that's spiking my blood sugar and, breaking down my pancreatic function.
I love that process in all of our healing. Let's get real. Let's get honest. Let's own it. And from there, we can change. But with all these people who are diabetic, I'm just thinking about the strain on the NHS and actually how much is that costing the country? That's huge.
At least 10 billion.
Wow.
Because, when you think of all the monitoring and the clinics and the heart attacks and the limb, the vascular surgery and. But if you couple that with obesity, which is about another 10 billion,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the world of obesity, they're now having to buy what's called bariatric equipment. So it's double-sized wheelchairs, double-sized operating tables. We're talking now about some people having to be airlifted by helicopter into hospital because the ambulance crew can't lift them in to the ambulance. And if they're in there, they can't fit on the bed.
Mm.
The bed is not big enough in the ambulance to carry somebody who is very, very large. So there's that. But I've been reading that if you couple all of that with the social cost, and what's going on in terms of productivity and, the ability to work and so forth, people are talking about literally billions that it's costing society.
So from this situation of us being marketed to by the food industry and thinking we need convenience and actually just not having awareness of these processed foods that we're eating and the effect on our body, it's having social effect, it's having economic effect, it's having health effect. That's the epidemic, Rosy.
Well, and yes, the social care costs, and that's before we get to the human misery, and the lack of and the self-image problems and so forth. We of course have to bring exercise and movement into the picture here because the Americans call it sitting disease. So when we are sedentary and glued to our computers for 8 hours a day and not moving, this is, of course, is meaning that the available blood glucose that we've just had from our highly carby, sugary breakfast or our sandwichy lunch with lots of bread and so forth, or our Krispy Kreme donut or whatever, it's just going straight into fat. And they're saying, when I was taught domestic science O-level as a 14-year-old, I was told that a man needed 3,500 calories a day and a woman 2.5, unless they were very physical. Well, people are saying now that a woman that's a desk worker may not need any more than 1,200 or 1,600 calories in a day. And this is why Cytoplan is so big on what they call the nutrition gap. Because what they're saying is if you only need 1,200 calories not to be getting large, every single mouthful would have to be organic, local, so intensely nutritious that you would be getting all that goodness, enough nutrients into your body. But of course, for most people, it isn't.
It isn't. It's empty calories. And
Yeah.
that's the difference. That's why I think if you are going to make changes in your life and really focus on losing weight, the emphasis has got to come from health, Rosy, not from vanity. And because everybody's body is different shapes and sizes, and I'm very pro that, particularly because of my scoliosis. I'm not advocating perfect bodies. But what I am advocating is nutrition and making sure you have enough nutrients, vitamins and minerals to be able to support your basic metabolic rate. And that's your digestion system, your immune system, your brain function. not how you look. The byproduct of it is that you will lose the fat because you're changing this system that you're talking about. You know, the more you lower your cortisol, the more calmer you are, and you're eating a lot of phytonutrients from plants, the scales start tipping and your body starts working in a healthy way.
Well, one example of that, absolutely relevant to this conversation, is chromium.
Right.
So the pancreas needs chromium to make insulin. So if we're not getting the right mineral balance in our food, one of the reasons for pancreatic failure can be lack of chromium.
Right.
And in fact, Cytoplan do a supplement. It was called blood glucose support. If anybody goes into Cytoplan and just looks for blood sugar support, I don't think it used to be called Chromium GTF, but I think it's now got blood sugar in the title. It's a thing worth trying if you're newly diagnosed, just to see, can you actually, and for that matter, you know, a good multivitamin and mineral. I use CoQ10 multi because it's got that boost of the CoQ10 for energy. It's got the whole spectrum of the vitamins and all of the minerals.
Yeah, so to bridge that nutritional gap immediately. Yeah. And what's so crazy is that you don't need huge amounts of these minerals. You need small amounts, but some people are not getting them at all on this diet of processed carbs.
Yeah. And when you think about cognitive decline, Parkinson's, there's a strong link between Parkinson's and lack of vitamin B, to do with the microbiome that's been discovered.
Yeah.
All of our nerves, tissue, skin, hair needs vitamin B. So we need B complex for everything, especially if we're stressed. And it's very involved in the metabolism of sugar.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites from Cytoplan. I take that every day, the B complex. And it's so easy to bring into your routine. I mean, we're talking here, Rosy, about this being a lifestyle disease in a container in a world we live in where it's very hard because it's being pushed at you all the time. But when you do make a change, there's going to be significant impact on your health.
Yeah. And while we're on the depressing part of this subject, there's another wider implication, which is that a lot of the diabetes problem and the obesity problem is worse in developing countries than even here. And this is in countries where they don't have the sugar monitoring, they don't have the insulin and the metformin and the meds. So people are adapting this Western lifestyle and thinking this is the way forward, but just getting into such terrible health problems without the holding there to deal with it. So, you know, we need to be messaging people in developing countries that, you know, in any possible way we can, that, you know, don't copy us because what's happening here is not okay.
Do not let that red truck into your country. You know which one I mean. The one usually at Christmas has Father Christmas on it. Don't let it in. It's the devil. So what are governments doing about it, Rosy? It sounds like not nearly enough.
Not nearly enough. I mean, there is now in the diabetes world, there's a diabetes prevention program, and there are more preventive strategies going on. And when people get on board with them, they do make a big difference. And health coaching, the evidence for the impact of health coaching in diabetes and obesity is massive. And we'll talk in a minute about the why, you know, what it actually takes to make the changes. But, you know, I think where we have to go is towards bans on, and it's starting to happen, restricting junk food, advertising, particularly to children, banning the buy one, get one free on unhealthy foods, limiting promotions, and a potential ban on the sugary drinks. There needs to be a lot more legislation, but I did hear Jonathan Porritt, the amazing, the Green Forum, the Future Forum, saying provocatively to a public health conference, we've been there all day hearing lovely lovely initiatives for childhood obesity or singing for depression or whatever. And he stood up and he boldly said, listen, you're beautiful people doing beautiful things, but you are, excuse my French, pissing in the wind unless we get the companies that are marketing all these products to pay the downstream costs of what their behavior and their marketing is doing.
Yeah, good idea.
You know, it's reckless beyond measure.
Mm.
And it's like selling cigarettes into countries where there are no hospitals, let alone hospices, let alone even morphine if people get lung cancer. How could anybody do that?
Yeah.
You know, how could that be allowed to happen?
Well, these products, they don't have warnings on them, do they? You know, the bottles of fizzy drinks do not like when you buy a packet of cigarettes now, so that you know if you're making that choice to smoke that cigarette, what the downside, what the health conditions are that it can cause. That's
Yeah.
not there for food. Maybe it should be. You would think twice about drinking the fizzy drink.
But, you know, we're all worried about war and the violence going on in the world, while these massive problems that are affecting, you know, a fifth of the population or half of the population in the case of cancer in a lifetime, it's just like we're in clear and present danger, but nobody's really talking about it.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we are.
We are.
We're starting. So let's talk about the really hopeful side of this, Rosie.
Yes.
Because we're not lost here. We are human individuals. We can change and we can reverse type 2 diabetes. How can we do that? How can we prevent it? How do we change?
There are two big sides to that question. There are the natural remedies and things we can do so for example, there's foods as medicines with the big accent being on fibre, whole foods. So moving across to brown rice from white rice or brown bread, or bringing beans and pulses in as a staple part of the diet. So if anything, thinking of eating in a more, you know, a more African way or a more Indian way, where actually the meat or the richer things are downplayed, certainly in traditional cultures. In Japan, cheese and milk products are not part of the culture in traditional diets. So I think the emphasis in society on looking at traditional cooking styles, Middle Eastern, all the beautiful ways of cooking vegetables, grains is such a key, and eating salads. So we need to fill ourselves up with foods which are slow burning carbs with a low GI. So the GI index is how rapidly foods are absorbed. So did you know, for example, that the amount of sugar in a certain chocolate bar beginning with M is the same as the sugar in 5 kilos of apples? So you would have to munch your way through, let's call that 15 apples, to get the same sugar hit as 1 chocolate bar. So, you know, I rest my case, my lad.
There are small changes that you can make, Rosie, and things that have stuck with me are I don't drink fizzy drinks at all, but I don't drink a lot of apple and orange juice because there's a lot of apples, there's a lot of sugar in juice, and you are consuming it really quickly. And if I do eat a lot of fruit, but when I have a piece of fruit, I eat some nuts at the same time. And not a huge amount. You only need a handful, 10 almonds or cashew nuts. But what you're doing is bringing fibre in at the same time as sugar, and it helps to slow down the release into your bloodstream. That's the key, because then your bloodstream can cope with it, and you're probably using it up if you're walking a mile a day or you're not sat at your computer the whole time. But it's slowing it down so you don't get that spike in insulin.
Well, yes. And, you know, people say eating whole food, oh, it's such hard work. Well, I beg to differ. So you may have heard me say before that I will cook a mug full of short grain brown rice with a mug and a half of water, just boil it really gently for 40 minutes. I'll have a third of it then and there with a bit of soy sauce and a drizzle of sesame oil, a bit of tahini. Just even like that is delicious. Or I'll have it with steamed vegetables or a stir fry. A third of it I'll then use the next day as a rice salad. I'll put in some sweet corn, some peppers, some, chop in and maybe put a few sultanas or nuts in there with a little bit of dressing. And one of the things I learned this, or I created this when I was on Weight Watchers, was what I call my pointless dressing. It's a dressing where I use a soya yogurt instead of oil for the carrier. So I'll use the vinegar and the mustard and the salt and pepper, garlic, etc. But instead of putting in great, huge amounts of olive oil, just a couple of spoons of soya yogurt or coconut yogurt as the carrier, and you've suddenly got an incredibly tasty dressing without all the fat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can eat well and it be very, very tasty.
Yeah.
And your palate does change, I think. I mean, when I first started reducing the amount of sugar, things did taste different. But that's why I think you've got to hone in on what is it actually doing to my body. Education is so key because once you know, you know. You can't unknow it, and you're making a conscious choice to hurt your body with that amount of sugar.
Yes, well, we have to look at that one, straight on, don't we? But day 3 of this little 1 cup of brown rice is I'll just maybe fry a few mushrooms and onions, and again, and maybe a few chestnuts. Put that in. It's making my mouth water even talking about it. It's so delicious.
And knows what's good for you. That's why you have
a spoon of tahini, But I think what I've started saying to myself is that perhaps my next book will be called Eat Like an Elf. I've got this image in my mind that the goblins are the ones eating all the meat with the dribbly butter and, meat fat dribbling down their chins, and the imps are the ones who are eating all the chocolates and sweets and, those sugary foods, whereas the elves are just floating about having leaves and, very light things. And while we're on the subject of foods, some fruits are very sugary. So bananas are very sweet, dates are very sweet, dried fruit is very sweet. Whereas I know carrot juice is sweet, but my partner Mike has taken to carrying, God bless him, a bag of carrots around and apples in. So where he would have reached for a sweet bar, he now reaches for a carrot.
Yeah, and berries are amazing. Blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, they're amazing, low GI. And if you have a look, you can just Google what the low GI foods are. What are the low GI fruits? Pick one of those instead of a banana. These little changes, Rosie, they don't take any effort.
Yeah. And I think putting a focus on salads, because they're raw, but if we chop up, if we make a slaw with chopped cabbage, grated carrots, onion, and then we can enrich that in any other way that we wish, or make salads out of like French beans and even red kidney beans. I love to make a salad with red kidney beans and chop in some celery, a few tomatoes, some garlic, a little bit of onion, dressing, etc. And it takes less than 10 minutes to make.
Yeah. But what about if we can't make the change? What is behind that? It's hard sometimes. And I'm not, if anybody is really, really struggling with it, then my heart goes out to you, because the first thing is that you're probably under a lot of stress and pressure. And the second thing is that this coping mechanism of food is probably quite a strong pattern in your psyche. I know that when I was young, Rosie, if I did something well, I was rewarded by given some sweets. if I was feeling unwell and a little bit sad, I was rewarded by sweets and cakes. This goes right back to being when we're little, really, doesn't it? So
Absolutely. And just before we go there, because that is the biggest question of this episode, there are some natural things. I've mentioned chromium. Cinnamon is good for supporting our pancreas. Berberine can lower blood sugar. Alpha lipoic acid is good for our pancreatic function, and so on. So is turmeric, fenugreek. There are, if you look into the herbal formularies and the folklore. Yeah, so let's tune in to what we have in the hedgerows, what are the natural ways we can tackle blood sugar. But the question you just asked about how do we change, what's keeping us stuck, what are our patterns, what are our social norms, there's a really big job to do, because all this, because I'm worth it, or, the cream cakes or the sugary bars, we're hypnotized. We have been hypnotized or socialized into thinking this is all normal. And it is not normal. It is not normal. It never was normal. The perhaps our parents got away with it because they were more active. Perhaps if they didn't have a Hoover and a dishwasher and so on, they might have been doing more physical work. But when you think that food is so, if we socialize, how many times is it? Let's go out for a meal, and then you go out for a meal and there may be bread on the table, and it's a given that you have 3 courses, and then there's booze with it. You can have had in a meal like that, a classic meal out, can have had about 3 days calories, greatly in excess of what you need. So we have to start getting very lateral in terms of, what might be a different way to socialize, to go for a walk with your mates, or to go for a swim, or to go to play some kind of sport, to go to play tennis, or something completely different, to go to a comedy show. Or what do you think, Karen?
Well, I am just imagining my new life here in the Highlands, where there are not that many restaurants. So we've removed straight away the choice of, if I think of the town I used to live, there were probably 20 restaurants and as many pubs. So here where I am, I've come into an environment where that is taken away from me. So now 7 days a week, I'm cooking my own food. And then I was smiling as you were saying, what do you do with your mates? I'm just in the process of trying to build a life here. And Michael, my husband, well, he's already joined the badminton club and the pickleball club. And he has a sedentary job. He works in computers, but already there's Monday night and Thursday night where these guys that he's playing with, these folk that he's playing with, some of them are 70 plus and fitter than him. And that is because that's what they're doing with their evenings, is playing pickleball and badminton. But I also like the craft activities here, Rosy. So there's knitting clubs, crocheting clubs, book clubs. There's so many different activities that you can do that doesn't involve food. And I'm feeling very grateful that actually I'm in an environment now where it's not that easy to get to the old behavior of let's go for a meal, let's go for early bar and access this, what can make you feel so happy and well short term. Because remember, when we've had this sugar rush, what comes? A huge crash, because your insulin kicks in and it takes the blood glucose away. You then get a crash and you feel tired. What do you do at that point? You reach for the sugar again. It's a perpetual cycle. So when it's not around us here in Scotland, that is forcing the break. Otherwise, you go hungry. You can't eat.
And I think I've heard you say many times, listen to your body.
Yeah.
for when you're actually full, as opposed to, there are 2 more courses coming.
Mm-hmm.
But radically challenge yourself to think, how much do I actually need versus what I might want or desire? Because it's for most of us, it's far less than you are currently eating. So it might be a thing of going down to 2 meals a day instead of 3. It might be thinking twice about throwing a dinner party or going out for a meal and doing something different. It definitely is better to be eating earlier. So this idea of intermittent fasting, where we're just eating in an 8-hour window, say between 11 in the morning and 7 at night, so that our body has the chance to completely process the food and have a period in homeostasis and balance through the rest of the night. But, just become super conscious of where you fall into a habit. So you're checking out at the petrol station. Are you grabbing are you grabbing a chocolate bar? Are you grabbing a pack of crisps? I saw something that said that if a kid has 2 cans of sweet drink, 2 packets of crisps, and 3 biscuits, they've already had the calories they need for the day. And for a lot of kids, that is on top of whatever they're actually being given by way of food.
Yeah, because those will be empty calories as well,
Yeah.
Rosy.
Yeah.
Very little vitamins, very little minerals, no
Yeah.
nutrition in it. That's the cycle we're in. I mean, I think the more you can educate yourself about what causes diabetes, what's going on in your body, and what food you are putting in your mouth that kicks off that cycle, once you can view it as poison, because that it's literally poison.
Yes.
Would you put poison into your mouth, and let alone would you give poison to your child?
Yes, absolutely. And I was chuckling because I was thinking of, putting my hand up to being a feeder. I have given love through food. I am a foodie, and it sounds like, hello, I'm Rosy. I am a foodie.
We need to set a club going, Rosy, for this.
Yes, and again, true confessions. Every guy I've lived with has put on a stone or 2. My lovely partner Mike he went on to the Wild Fit approach of Eric Edmeades a few years ago, and is now completely carb free, and he's back down to the weight where I met him. And so, if you're listening to this and you think, gosh, yes, I'm one of those feeders, giving my love through, excessive meals and cakes and dinner parties. One of the things, here comes a little rant, is about the Great British Bake Off, for God's sake. My generation spent the whole of the 60s getting ourselves onto brown everything, brown food, brown bread, getting off the pastries and the meringues. And suddenly a whole generation is being told, oh, it's absolutely great to have millefeuille and, all the other cakery bits and bobs and biscuits and pastries. So, and this is the British Broadcasting Corporation is supposed to be about public education, so there's a big disconnect in society, but just watch ourselves. Let's watch ourselves together and swap, that chocolate bar for a carrot or an apple or a pear or a beautiful piece of melon or an orange. Let's just get real with our food and our eating and ourselves, because we can do this.
Yeah, we definitely can. And I just want to remind everybody, if you're listening to this episode but you haven't listened to some of the previous ones, there's a beautiful episode with Sandra Miskimen and her company Smash Worldwide, which is an eating program and supplements. You've just mentioned one as well, Rosy. Did you say Wild
Fit? Yeah.
And there are people that are having really good results with Zoe. You heard of Zoe?
Yeah, where they're looking at your microbiome for your type.
Yeah.
There's dear old Eddie Arbu.
Eddie Arbu on Instagram. Big shout out to him. I love his courage and his enthusiasm. Watch him when he walks down the aisles in the supermarket and tells you what's good and what isn't. And there's a lot of swear words, just a warning there. But this is encouraging that there are people now, Rosie, that are calling it out. You know, this just aisles and aisles of rubbish that is greenwashed. As you know, we talked about products being greenwashed when we had Jane Sterland on from Walida UK. They're doing it the same with foods. So if you educate yourself about how your body works and you look on the back of food for ingredients, because there's a lot of people, you know, with granny's homemade such and such, making you believe that it is wholesome and healthy. Look on the back at the ingredients. There are so many apps now where you can just take a snapshot and it will tell you how many sugars. My pet hate is the blinking cereals, and they will put on the back the amount of sugars, but they will also tell you that it is per 100 grams of serving. So it can look like it isn't very much sugar, but who eats 100 grams of cereal in the morning? You don't. You don't even weigh it. And before you know it, you've got 400 grams of whatever your tasty sugar cereal is. That is more sugar than you need for the whole week, let alone the day. We could go on forever and ever, Rosie. We love our food. I'm not against food for love and celebration and sitting down for a meal together. And I'm not against eating a lot during the day hours, as long as it's really good calories, not crisp sweets and fizzy drinks, the empty calories. Yeah.
And anybody listening who's been recently diagnosed, take heart, because it is reversible.
It is.
You know, and don't accept that you have to be on the medication lifelong. Get moving, and I would say get a health coach. And of course, I would particularly recommend the health creation mentors, because they are trained to look at the emotional side, the spiritual side, as well as the physical, and help you look at that big question of, if there's a hole you're filling with food, what is it, and how can you get that need met in a different way?
Wonderful.
You know, if you're eating because you're lonely or sad or brokenhearted or bored, you know, then let's help you to find a way of meeting those needs in so much better and more exciting a way.
Oh, we've been on an emotional roller coaster with this one, Rosie. We started in deep sadness. The anger came through at the outrage of it all that we have to live in. And now we always leave with hope, because there is always hope. There is always change. There is always love. And it's easier when you spend time with people who are on the same path as you. So we look forward to seeing you in our community and being alive and loving it. You can do it.
Thank you, Karen.
See you next week.
It's so good to know that you're listening. Our community is growing bigger day by day. Now we want to engage with you and connect with you to create more opportunities to learn, love, and grow together.
The first step is to go to our website, aliveandlovingit.org, to join the community. This means that we can communicate with you directly to let you know the details of new episodes, next week's guest preview, and of all the new opportunities that we are creating for you.
And in response to the huge interest that there's been in our inspiring guests, we've created for you on the website an exciting Go Deeper page, giving you direct access to our guests and their services.
And if you're new to the podcast, we strongly recommend that you go back and listen to the earlier episodes, because we have some of the most inspiring teachers, scientists, authors, and therapists of our time sharing their wisdom with you.
Our other invitation to you is to become a guardian of Alive and Loving It and join the beautiful group of people helping this podcast and community continue to grow and reach more hearts around the world. If you visit the website aliveandlovingit.org, you'll see our winged heart logo in the top right-hand corner, which will take you straight to our Guardian page on Patreon. And this is a platform designed specifically to support podcast and content creators.
It would mean so much to have you as part of this growing community, connecting with us, our guests, and everything we are building together. And if it feels right for you, becoming a guardian is simply a way of supporting the podcast with a monthly contribution at whatever level feels comfortable for you.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, this is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
Until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. We are so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It, and we welcome you very warmly to our Alive and Loving It community.